Well, here we are, the Tornado's back, all polished and detailed, with the emblem sitting beautifully and correctly. It's actually a NOS piece I found from GM Parts. I had the wheel covers repainted. So the Oldsmobile Rocket is red again and the black is vibrant. They were also polished. This car has the original optional polished wheels. Just a spectacular looking vehicle. Finished in autumn bronze. I love the reverse light. It's integrated into the bumper there, very classy. And the single unbroken line, which by the way is the same line on the 67 Riviera. Same roof. Different rear quarter panel. And just a cool interior with the rear speaker back there. So let's walk around and talk about some of the strange, unique features, quirks, idiosyncrasies, etc. of this 1966 Oldsmobile Toronado. Now, turning under hood, we have some fun things. If you want to impress your friends, you can always tell an Oldsmobile V8 because it has the oil fill tube there, including the diesels. It's the only V8 that I know of, at least for the domestic companies, that has the oil fill tube like that. So whether it's an Olds 307, 425, 455, that's where you can find the oil fill tube on these. For the transmission, there's a couple interesting things. This is effectively a turbohydromatic 400 transmission that you can see the torque converter mates up to the engine. But then, after the torque converter, there's a Morse high-vo chain that runs inside here that's about 1.5 inches thick that drives the remainder of the transmission pointing forward in the car into a final drive that I will show you in a minute. And there's the half shaft right there that goes out to the driver's side front wheel. So this is a longitudinally mounted. In other words, the engine is mounted this way as opposed to transverse mounting on a lot of cars today. Front wheel drive, engine and transmission setup. Other piece of trivia for you, this is the kickdown switch as well as the switch for the switch pitch converter. This has a 2-speed or 2-stall speed torque converter. Basically, when you open the throttle after a certain opening, it will activate a different stall speed in the torque converter, higher stall speed so that you have more power. And then when you're not stepping on the accelerator as hard, it's a lower stall speed so you get better fuel economy. This was used on turbohydromatic 400 transmissions from 1965 through 67, I believe. It was not used on transmissions after that, I think because of a cost-cutting move, but other GM transmissions had it, including the Dynaflow, something very similar, and it works great. It was just eliminated because of cost and complexity reasons. Here you have something that you certainly don't see on a modern car anymore. This is the so-called heat riser. So you can see there's a bimetallic spring there that when the engine is cold, it'll direct hot exhaust gases up underneath the carburetor to help warm it up. And then as that engine warms, then this weight basically allows the exhaust just to go completely out the back of the vehicle. Another interesting thing is that this is not an air-conditioned car, and so it has a pretty wimpy fan shroud here and a pretty wimpy fan, just a 5-blade non-declutching fan. If you got the air-conditioned vehicle, you'd have a declutching fan that would spin a lot faster. This one really doesn't spin very fast. Has a pretty big radiator, so I suppose the fan doesn't need to spin all that fast. It has quite a bit of capacity. But if this were an air-conditioned car, you would see the declutching fan up there. Oldsmobile V8s, like Pontiacs and like Chevrolets, and of course like some other engines, Chrysler 318s have the distributor back here. So some other GM V8s like Cadillac and Buick would put the distributor up front. You know, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. I think in the back is a little bit harder to service, but it's not all that bad. You can see there's a ton of space back here. I mean, you can see the ground. And you're really not crowded for doing anything like a tune-up, as you can see here. It's pretty gosh darn easy to get to everything. Here you have a manual antenna. This is not a power antenna. This is what came standard in the car with the radio, and you actually have to go out here and pull it up and retract it. It's funny, a lot of people tell me, well, the antenna motor is broken. Well, there is no antenna motor on this car. It just has the manual antenna. Next, we have the wheels. This car has the optional chrome wheels. These were just, this portion was just a standard argent painted wheel, unless you paid extra for the chrome wheels, which this car has. And I think it looks pretty jazzy. I love the rocket symbol there. Looks super cool. On the back windows, I always thought this was interesting. This is not just a straight up and down motion, but let's see if I can open here. It kind of goes cockeyed as it goes down. This car obviously does not have power windows. So it kind of goes in and rotates this way. Does a so-called monkey motion. So there you go, it's rotating forward. And the glass, that's where the stop is set. So there's still a little bit of glass showing on both the front door and the back window. Well, I could put the window down and the front down a little bit more, so not too much glass is showing, but you do get some of the glass still showing in the back. Next out back, we have the single leaf rear suspension that was used on the Toronado and Eldorado. That's a single leaf. There are 2 shocks on either side, one for lateral inputs and one for vertical inputs. So there's 4 shocks on the rear total. Pretty horrible suspension setup. The frame terminates right here, right at the leaf shackle. So you can see that's the end of the frame right there. It's a 3/4 length frame on these cars. And after that, it's nothing. And I think that endows the Eldorado and the Toronado with a rather unfortunate ride compared to the Riviera, which was a full X frame underneath and 4 coils. Notice also what's in the garage here, the 67 Eldorado. Interesting fact, the Toronado and Eldorado, as I was mentioning, was the same platform. They have the same windshield, A-pillars. They don't have the same roof or the sheet metal. I believe the front glass is also the same, and the inner sheet metal there. So despite the fact that this car looks nothing like this car, they share quite a few common components. Not the drivetrain though, which was, this engine was unique to Oldsmobile, the 425, although they did share the turbohydromatic 425 transmission. Here on these non-AC cars, you can also see all the vacuum diaphragms for opening the various dampers. They're more exposed here. A little bit harder to see that on the on the AC cars. And of course, it wouldn't be a Toronado without hidden headlights. And why else would you have these big vacuum reservoirs but to hold vacuum? But so that you can open the headlights. Now, this was a vehicle where General Motors styling chief Bill Mitchell allegedly didn't care for the style of these headlights. He thought it made the car's front end look like it was a frog, and I kind of agree with him. It's a bit inelegant. This car amazingly still has 3 of its original T3 headlights. See, it says T3 there. This one's been replaced. These 2 are original though. So that's pretty cool. Not sure if I'll have enough vacuum for them to go down. Oh, yeah. Look at that. It's going to sleep. 66 was also the only year for these eyebrows and this very linear grille. 67, they go to an egg crate grill and eliminate those eyebrows. I love the 66 front end. I think it's the best of all. When I got this car, you'll remember that this Oldsmobile logo was inverted. Sometimes people, I've seen so many of these cars when they've had some paint work done, as this one has on the front end, the painter puts the rocket facing downward, which is just absolutely wrong. That is the correct direction for the rocket. Another interesting fact was that the styling of this vehicle was inspired a bit by the front-wheel drive Cords, including the wheel design and the front end. And I'll put a picture of one of those Cords here, and you'll see what I mean, that there are some similarities, although this is a very modern shape overall. In fact, this is the vehicle that's credited with these huge wheel arches, being the first vehicle. And it has this beautiful body side that's one piece from the roof all the way down, except for the feature that goes over the wheels. Other thing I love about this car is whereas most vehicles taper at the rear and come inward, this one actually flares outboard, and it's a great look. You also have GM's flow-through ventilation system. This is where the ventilation would exhaust, and there were a lot of problems with this. Often the tubes that drain the rainwater out onto the ground leak, and then the trunk gets water in it and rusts out. Thankfully, this car is perfectly solid. This car does have the tilt and telescoping steering wheel. You telescope it by rotating this, and then you can see the wheel goes in and out. And you rotate it back to lock it. I also think this car is the largest accelerator pedal of any vehicle. It's absolutely massive. Oldsmobile did that for a number of years. Other GM divisions had massive accelerators, but not as big as this. You also have a one-year-only interior in this Toronado. 1967 would be redesigned to have buttons down the middle, a bit more luxurious, new door panels. 66 also had a couple different door panels, one of which you can see the pull strap is integrated into that feature on the door panel here. On some of them, it's not. So they used a number of different door panels. This is also a deluxe model. There was the non-deluxe door panel. So this is the better looking interior, and it's very tasteful, I would say. You also have a nice feature for the back passengers, and that's that rear door handle here that you can get out. Closes great. And you have that on either side. That would get eliminated in the later 60s for cost reasons on the driver's side. It would stay on the passenger side. But here in 66, it was in both places. You also have a rare car here in that this car is a non-AC car, but still has the AC vents, or the upper vents, which were standard, and you can turn the ventilation on and then turn the fan on, and you get air up at the top. That was pretty rare. Often you just got air from the kick wells here. And this one you do get the fresh air that comes in through there, but you also can use the fan to push air out of those upper outlets. And here you have the optional cornering lights that I will talk about in a second, how weird these are, but I think it's just a great look. Almost look like shark gills. And you have this super huge front end overhang, significantly longer even than the Riviera, so that you get these big pontoon fenders that really form the distinctive front end of the Toronado. Now let's take a look at some more interesting features and quirks of the car. Now moving underneath the car, you see some things that are unique to the Toronado and the Eldorado that would come out in 1967. The first is this final drive. Here's the setup. This car is front wheel drive, and you can see there's the half shaft that comes off that final drive. There's the other one. So it's almost like a front differential here. up front. A very robust system was used on the GMC motorhomes in the 1970s, pretty much unaltered. This turbohydromatic 400 transmission that was split after the torque converter had a chain driving the transmission into this final drive here. You can also see the front suspension is torsion bars. That's that big long bar there that goes halfway back the car. So when the control arm moves, it twists the torsion bar, and that's what provides the resistance. There's no spring in the middle there, as you can see, because the half shaft is taking up that space. Well, and here you have it, a half a light bulb, and the other is a portion of it's in the socket there. What in the world's going on here? And let's tip that light bulb out. This is actually two pieces. This is an inset in here that comes out. Well, I'm not going to force it, but trust me, this is two pieces. This is not a single piece, because I did it on the other side. There it goes. There. See how that's separating here? Well, must have been a late redesign on this, because I can't think of any other reason why they would make that two separate pieces. Probably because you could see the bulb, since this is just purely transparent, and thought it didn't look good, and they put this diffuser on the back. A rather strange design. But the other strange piece of this, you're going to say, well, what is so strange about this? You just have 4 screws, you take it off, then you take the light off here. Well, the reason why this is popped off is because if you take, I saw this from the back side, and I just pulled it out like this, very easy. And I thought that's how you change the bulb very easily. I'll just pull it out. Well, I pulled it out, and if you do that, well, you can pull this piece out. It actually breaks the bulb off because the bulb is too big to fit through the hole, and then it drops inside the cornering light. Oh boy, unbelievable. So, put a new bulb in, put everything back together, but I thought you'd enjoy that interesting piece of General Motors engineering from 1966 there. And there's the cornering light operating. And of course, it wouldn't be a Toronado without the rolling drum speedometer that provides instant readouts. It actually works very well, quite handy. So there you go, you can see it.